Do you remember a time when PCs were rapidly becoming easy to use all-in-one affairs, only for people to realise that this thoroughly restricted their upgrade options and it was best to go back to separate components? Because I do, and although these machines often looked beautiful, they were indeed restrictive, and although compact, also somewhat bulky, if that makes sense. The Apple iMac G3 is probably the best known all-in-one machine, with its brightly coloured translucent plastic casing. These machines were released in August 1998, and competitors such as eMachines swiftly introduced their own range of low-cost clones. But of course this was nothing new. Even before the Macintosh, Apple had been making this type of machine with their Lisa models. Later machines such as the Color Classic and Performer would also follow, offering a sleek if slightly expensive computing device that looked reasonable in any corner of the home. Of course, PC manufacturers eventually caught on to this idea with machines such as the 486-based Compaq Presario 425, released in 1993, squashing together the monitor and base unit into a more affordable, streamlined device. But this was Amstrad's core area, creating products designed to appeal to a wider audience, products which borrow from the ideas of competitors but in a lower cost, easier to use format. Not long after Apple released their handheld Newton, Amstrad were on the scene with the lower cost pen pad, so it's hardly surprising that in 1996 Amstrad would hop onto this bandwagon with the Amstrad Integra series. Of course, this wasn't the first IBM compatible PC Amstrad had built, with machines stretching back to the low-cost PC 1512 in 1986, through to the Amstrad Mega PC in 1993. Under the PCW line, they'd even made their own range of all-in-one machines. But 1996 was a different time, and Alan Sugar's business was no longer at the top of its game, with its focus shifting to the area of communications and broadcasting. This marks the Integra as the last Amstrad branded PC, with its computing division merging with Vigeland just 1 year later in 97. It also means that this particular model is quite hard to come by, but its limited production run isn't the only reason. So let's look around this compendious machine, because in reality, it's not that small. Although its vertical dimensions are fairly respectable, its depth is somewhat at odds with its premise. You really need a large desk to place this on. These IKEA tables are 60 centimeters deep, but I still need to span 2 to get room for the keyboard and mouse. Back in the 90s, I was lucky to get just an average sized PC to fit on my tiny desk at all. This thing would have stood no chance. On the front, we have the built-in 15-inch SVGA monitor, offering resolutions up to 1024 by 768. Underneath we have the Integra badge, and actually this isn't the first piece of Amstrad kit to bear the name. Back in the 70s, the Amstrad Integra 4000 Mark II amplifier was the carrier, paving Amstrad's signature move of putting lots of often separate pieces of kit into one unit. It would then be reused shortly after the release of the Integra, as it happens, in the Integra Face Care system, proving the versatility of this word, which as you'd expect means integral, whole, entire, or intact. I also wouldn't be surprised if Alan Sugar's kids aren't all called Integra either. Integra? Anyway, we then have your typical monitor controls housed between the built-in speakers. A 3.5-inch floppy drive, an IR receiver for the built-in TV card's remote, hard drive and power LEDs, a hole where I presume the reset button once resided, but actually if you click the switch inside, nothing happens. I've heard this was a dummy button, so maybe it was supposed to do something, but then deactivated before release. Next we have headphone and microphone jacks, another hole where the volume knob used to reside, and a handy mute button. To the right is the quad-speed CD-ROM drive, which seems to have a light on constantly, but still operates just fine. It's all a rather flush and functional frontage, especially with those extra ports. But what exactly lurks behind? Well, directly on the back of the monitor is the power switch. This is pretty standard fare for Amstrad machines. Obviously this means only one power cord is required, although machines of this era often had a pass-through power socket for the monitor anyway. Under that we have your standard line out and in, along with a joystick connector. To the right is that TV card I mentioned earlier, which is actually part of the standard specification, and allowed the machine to be used as a kind of media centre. We've even got a 33.6 baud modem underneath, making this a pretty functional beast. We then get to the usual PS2 ports, 2 DB9 serial connectors, a parallel port via printer and whatnot, and what I assume to be a VGA output terminated with a dongle. And of course dongle being an amazing word. With the display routed internally, I presume this is here because of Amstrad's cost-saving approach of recycling hardware from other sources. Now, a neat feature of the Apple and Compaq all-in-one machines is the ability to slide out the guts of the system in one fell swoop. Thankfully, Integra owners weren't disappointed on this front. Now inside we get a mix of pleasing componentry and proprietary disdain. Over here we have a 2GB Fujitsu hard drive, dated 1998. Now I'm fairly certain this wasn't the standard drive, usually this came with a paltry 540MB Seagate drive, although larger sizes were available. We've also got the CD-ROM and floppy here, along with this little connector for the sound card connections. Underneath that is a fully functional PCI slot. Now this half is completely separated by this riser card, offering ISA slots on the other side. In these ISA slots we find the TV tuner, allowing this little Amstrad to somewhat compete with other video multimedia systems at the time, including the Olivetti Envision. However, this small hard drive wouldn't have allowed for much recording space. Under that is the modem, truly making this an all-in-one machine, if a somewhat limited one. Now the processor here is a Pentium 100MHz with a socket 7 motherboard. Components like the S3 Trio 64 video card and Soundblaster 16 are strewn about in an integrated fashion, meaning there's limited scope for expansion here, especially if you're hoping to get a faster video card. All of this plugs into the base unit through a front edge connector, and when you slide the motherboard back in, it unites the connector at the front of the case. It's all quite nice, and it must have been cripplingly limiting for users at the time, watching the world advance around them but being stuck with Amstrad's 1996 vision of the multimedia future. Still, nowadays it's pretty darn nice for people like me, as I get a machine which has been fairly untouched for the past 21 years. Let's get this bad boy up and running. Now, originally I was using this Microsoft keyboard and mouse, but then I realised that the components which ship with this were exactly the same as the Mega PC, so if I grab them, it unveils the full Integra kit in all its splendid glory. Although the mouse needs some good old-fashioned cleaning. Yes, this is what we did before those fangled laser mice. Now, you may have to excuse me swapping between the different keyboards in this video, as I only realised this halfway through filming because, I don't know, dense. Now, being from 1996, this PC also came in 486 flavours and with varying amounts of RAM. This little beauty is definitely at the higher end of specifications with the Pentium processor and 32MB of plentiful random access memory. It also originally came with Windows 95, but this has been upgraded to 98 at some point, which is nice. We're currently running at 800x600 in 16-bit colour, but the video card can push 1024x768 at the sacrifice of only 256 colours. In any case, the shutter speed on my camera isn't set for that, so let's go back. Actually, I'm interested about that rear VGA port. So, with a bit of unscrewing, I can confirm it is indeed a VGA port, and it's held in place by a piece of rubber, I guess, so you don't lose it. Also, when you take it out, the monitor display disappears, which makes me think that you can plug another monitor into here and use an external display, for whatever reason. And as I demonstrate with this flat screen, you indeed can. Plug the dongle back in and everything reverts back to normal, so at least there's an escape route if the monitor goes screwy. You can even install a different video card through this route if it really took your fancy, or maybe it would take up the desk quite a bit. Okay, so what should we do first? How about some tests? CPU-Z or CPU-Z will do nicely, confirming the Pentium, 8KB of level 1 cache, the SIS chipset, and indeed a CPU score of... Three. A quick comparison to the Intel i7 6700K released way back in 2015 tells us this little Pentium is a little behind the times. But you know, 3. It's still fairly respectable. It's enough to play Quake. But we'll get to that in a minute. It's also enough to play the Maze and Flying Windows screensavers with ease. What it can't do is handle MPEG videos. Well, not really. This is a low resolution MPEG-1 file, which consumes a hefty 670KB of disk space. But the poor little Amstrad is struggling like crazy. This program is actually part of the bundled Integra Vision applications for the TV card, but I couldn't get it to function, not in the limited time I spent anyway. Firstly, I didn't have an aerial compatible with its bizarre connection. Secondly, it didn't seem to like a composite input either. And thirdly, there seemed to be some underlying setup issues as well. Hopefully I'll come back to this in the future for a dedicated TV card video or something. Let's have a look at some more programs. Now, rather fittingly, I have the 1996 Grolier Multimedia Encyclopedia. Or Grolier, however you want to call it. This is how we used to handle homework back in the 90s. Let's just say it didn't always pan out as you'd have liked. I spent most of my time watching absolutely crap videos like this one, mainly because the rest of the information was pretty useless anyway. Anyway, look, I know what you're here for. You're here for the same as me. You want to know how this thing handles the main show, the climax, the nucleus of this video, gaming. Well, actually, pretty good. Even though I'm acting like an absolute heathen here by running Quake through Windows 95 rather than exiting to DOS, it still works perfectly. Smoother than a Cyrix processor, that's for sure. The built-in speakers aren't too shabby either. Doom 2 obviously runs fine, although it does highlight that the Soundblaster 16 isn't in fact a Soundblaster 16. You can hear some bum sounds from its FM synthesis, making it apparent this is some kind of cheapo clone. Still, bum or not, I love the crap out of those MIDI sounds. If I wanted to push the system to its limits, I could install Tomb Raider 3, which I've done. I could then show you how sluggish it is, even at 320 by 240. If I change the screen resolution to 640 by 480, then it's utterly and completely unplayable. But then this is all running through software rendering. I'm sure if I put the time in to update the drivers and get the most from the S3 Trio card, then I could get something a little better. This really is just a test of the machine as it comes. Putting the lights back on for a second for the serious business that is Flight Simulator 98, you'll see it runs pretty well through DirectX 5. I mean, pretty well for the 90s anyway, and our expectations. Gamers now would be utterly disgusted at these frame rates, of course. Anyway, I'll round up with a demonstration of Team 17's classic Worms, because it's that kind of an evening. I mean, every evening is a Worms evening. That's the Amstrad Integra. Beautiful. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, watch, contribute, or leave. In any case, have a great evening.